Why don't we go ahead and get started with today's meeting of the Tacoma-Pierce County Coalition to End Homelessness. Rosemary, would you like to kick us off?
Thank you, Rob, and welcome everyone to our open table where we connect with one another and learn from one another and work to end the crisis of homelessness. We acknowledge that we gather on the traditional homelands of the Puyallup tribe of Indians who have lived on and stewarded these lands for thousands of years and continue to do so today. Beyond this awareness, we call ourselves to uplift the voices, experiences, and histories of the indigenous peoples of this land and beyond. Today, I've been thinking about advocacy. With its Latin origin in the verb advocare, to call forward, the word can mean to summon, call to one's aid, plead in favor of, recommend, or support. Sometimes it can also mean to witness silently through presence, or more strongly, to resist inaction, even in disobeying laws. Unfortunately for our common life as citizens, it can also bring clashing rhetorics and insufferable spins on reality. Today, I raise up two important anniversaries occurring this week that illustrate the power of advocacy and the need for continuing vigilance in protecting advocacy gains. Wednesday, August 6th, marked the 80th anniversary of the U.S. nuclear bombing of Hiroshima, Japan, on that date in 1945, followed by a nuclear bombing of Nagasaki 3 days later, the only time that nuclear weapons have been used in war. These two weapons accounted for an estimated immediate death toll of 120,000 people, with at least that many additional deaths over the years due to the effects of the bombing. Last year, the Nobel Committee awarded the Peace Prize to the nuclear bomb survivors group Nihon Hidanko, emphasizing the constancy of their nearly 70 years of advocacy for the elimination of all nuclear weapons. The prize was awarded with a sense of urgency given the recent efforts of many modern states to develop and increase their nuclear capabilities. The remaining survivors, or hibakusha, are few in number, but continue their advocacy worldwide. I remain in awe of their commitment at 80 years of age and more to continuing this essential work of warning and moral memory. The second significant anniversary marks the signing of the Voting Rights Act 60 years ago on August 6, 1965, by President Lyndon Johnson. Johnson famously said, "This right to vote is the basic right without which all others are meaningless." Some historians mark that day in 1965 as the date the U.S. actually committed to being a democracy, which would mean we're a very young democracy indeed, barely 60 years. Amendments to the Constitution paved the way for sure, the 13th, 14th, 15th, and 19th, directly or indirectly. The advocacy of the individuals and groups fighting for those amendments inspire me every day. But living out the promise was deeply challenged without the enforcement action provided by the Voting Rights Act. The more recent gutting of significant provisions of the Voting Rights Act through Supreme Court decision calls that commitment to ensuring full democracy into question, and efforts by the federal administration narrow the commitment further. Also, the current redistricting proposal in Texas and the efforts of Texas Democrats to deny a quorum for a vote offer more evidence of the troubled state of the right to vote and to have your vote really count. I'm still in awe of the power and the promise of the right to vote, but as I reflect on the extraordinary challenges we face as a global community, I'm reminded every day of how hard it is to sustain a commitment to trust ballots rather than violence and autocratic control to solve problems. And thinking specifically about why we're in this space together, I feel outraged every day that we, the people and the people's representatives, have made so little real progress in creating adequate housing options for our most vulnerable unhoused neighbors. The intersections are everywhere, and the urgency and complexity can mask the power of voting as a radical act of ordinary but organized people armed with experience and information. As we determine how to advocate in this time, including safeguarding the right to vote, it's good to remember all those who went before us, doing what ended up really being radical work. To center us in our work today, I close with the words of poet Nikki Giovanni, a member of the Black Arts movement of the 1960s and a longtime supporter of revolutionary action. Her 2020 poem is simply titled Vote. It's not a hug, nor mistletoe at Christmas. It's not a colored egg at Easter, nor a bunny hopping across the meadow. It's a vote, saying you are a citizen. Though it sometimes is chocolate, sometimes vanilla, can be female or male. It is right or left. I can agree or disagree, but, and this is an important but, I am a citizen. I should be able to vote from prison. I should be able to vote from the battlefield. I should be able to vote when I get a driver's license. I should be able to vote when I can purchase a gun. I must be able to vote if I'm in the hospital, if I'm in the old folks' home, if I'm needing a ride to the polling place. I am a citizen. I must be able to vote. Folks were lynched, folks were shot, folks' communities were gerrymanders, folks who believed in the Constitution were lied to, burned out, bought and sold because they agreed all men and women are created equal. Folks vote to make us free. Good for the folks. Good for us. My country, 'tis of thee. Welcome to the work of democracy. And thank you all for coming here to be with us today to do the work we do together. We use this time to just make sure everyone who's new will know how we operate in this space. And we ask that you keep yourself on mute if you're not speaking, that you use the raised hand function if you're wanting to be called on or to have your voice heard, that you turn off your video if you're doing something that might be distracting, and let you know that we use the chat for communication really a lot during the meeting. So if you're new and you have questions, it's a good place to ask them. And if you're new and have a group that you'd like us to know about, Teresa Power Judas will put her name in the chat so that you can contact and make an arrangement to speak with us briefly at one of our meetings about your group. So in terms of the time to introduce yourself, to say that you're here and want to say hello, this is very short, just your name and if you're part of an organization or what inspired you to come would be fine as well. So we'll do that for anyone who's new or anybody who's been away a while and wants to say hello again. So just raise your hand if you do, and Rob or I will recognize you.
Thank you, Christy, for introducing yourself in the chat.
Yes, welcome. Well, I don't see other names right now, so again, is following Christy's lead there. If there's someone else who'd like to let us know that you're here, just let us know in the chat, and people will be responding to questions that you have throughout the meeting. So, Rob, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Rosemary, as always, for a thoughtful start to this week's meeting. And Jordan, thank you for introducing yourself in the chat. We see you, or we see your name. We don't see you. Um, But as a reminder, please feel free to use the chat extensively throughout the meeting. It adds a layer of richness to these meetings, I think, that is really helpful. Also, people can ask questions and get answers in the chat. And remember, you can send direct messages to people in chat. Um, those will not be retained after the meeting. Those are all private between the individuals. So that's just a reminder for folks. So let's get started with this week's meeting. Let me repost in the chat our one more time our community norms so everybody is aware of those. And we can get started with our This Week on the Streets segment. So the purpose of this segment is to offer updates to each other essentially about what's happening on the streets, shifts in where people are at, shifting needs, anything that the 59 of us in this room might be able to help address. With the one caveat that we do ask if you have a specific location that you have a concern about, don't name that in the open space. Feel free to send a direct message in chat to me, and we can ensure that outreach folks get out to those people. We don't want to inadvertently end up having enforcement targeted on a spot because we name it during the meeting. So, one quick context thing before we get to Sally's hand that's up, and that is although we've had some rain and cooler weather the last couple of days, in fact, it was quite cool this morning for one, first time that it felt really fall-like out this morning. We're going to see temperatures rising back into the level where we have hot weather calls in the morning, starting on Sunday. So right now the forecast shows a high of 88 on both Sunday and Monday, and potentially getting up to 87 on Tuesday before we return to highs in the 70s. So this should not be a surprise. It's August. This is usually the hottest and driest part of the year. But it is going to be hot enough that the heat risk map shows moderate heat risk for significant parts of the county on Sunday and Monday. Right now, it doesn't show much heat risk on Tuesday, even though the forecast is only to be 1 degree cooler, so that may change. So there's the weather context. Why don't we get started with you, Sally?
Thanks, Rob. Sorry, I have to get off in about 10 minutes to go to the special city council meeting. The folks in the Hilltop are still being pushed around. They're being told to relocate, but they're not being told why or where they're supposed to go or what the penalties are if they don't. And so what's happened is turning the Hilltop into an emphasis area instead of a camping ban thing has meant a lot of confusion for people. So I have asked Vicki McLaurin at the City Neighborhood and Community Services Department to clarify the rules so that we know what to tell people. And so she has said she will do that. They are working on a set of FAQs, according to Vicki, and they're working on answers to some of the questions that I had. And Vicki tells me that she is intending for that information to be available early next week. So I will share it as soon as I get it. I think it's really important to be able to give accurate information to people so they know what to expect and how to be ready for what is going to happen. So that's going on. The other thing I just want to say is that I want to honor a homeless man who died on August 8th, 2022, that I tried to help for about a year and a half. Julie Anderson and I actually tried to help this man. And he had been discharged to the street after his feet were amputated for diabetes complications. His legs were still bandaged stumps. He was in a wheelchair. He lived at the post office at 13th and MLK under the awning for about a year and a half. Suffered a number of health complications through that time. Julie and I were generally unsuccessful in trying to find a handicapped accessible place for him to be. He was preyed upon by his so-called friends. It was just an awful situation. And so I want to honor him. His name was Solomon Wallace. He suffered greatly before he died. He was one of those slow deaths, Jan Runbeck, that you talk about. And I guess what I want to say is I don't think things have gotten any better. And that was like 2000. We started working with him in like 2018. So it's a real call to stay focused on trying to help the people we're trying to help and to understand just how awful many of these folks' circumstances are and how important it is for us to speak up for them. So I want to thank the coalition for doing that and urge us all to keep doing it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you for naming Mr. Solomon. Others with updates on what they're seeing on the streets this week, feel free to raise your hand or come off mute. And you can also use the chat and we can raise up things in the chat. Yeah, Jan, go ahead.
Yes, this is just more bad news. The Nativity House has had a reduction in force as far as having to lay folks off from services here at Nativity House, which means there will be less access to the day center. Right now, there is day center is open for the public for breakfast and lunch. That will not be available after September 1. So that's going away. The building will be accessible by folks who have beds already in the dormitories. There is a ripple effect in as much as people that we know who are using the day center, even for now the limited time of during meals, there is that chance that we might be able to connect them with services, in some cases housing. For instance, when the VA came last week to volunteers came, like our own Tammy came to pick up folks to go to a VA fair. Those folks weren't necessarily residents here. They were people from the street. So anytime there's a service or a resource that's lost, there is a ripple effect. So hoping that there's going to be better news somewhere from somebody. Take it over. It's not me.
Yeah, thank you for that update, Jan. I know I had seen chatter about those changes coming on September 1st, so thank you for bringing that into the space. Heather, I see your hand up next.
Yes, I just want to piggyback off of that. So I've gone to the Nativity House in the last 2 weeks a couple times, and when I arrive there, they won't confirm or deny if my client's there when I know my client's there. So as a caseworker, that really puts a jam into things, because if he was to get his housing referral, they'd probably let me know because he has no phone, and I would not be able to, they won't tell me if he's there or not as a navigator. And they're
Well,
very strict about it. It's happened twice in a row. I was just wondering if anybody else is getting that pushback to trying to see their clients or pick their clients up from Nativity. They won't announce, they won't call their name, they won't do nothing. They just sit at the door in front of you and say, oh, we can't confirm or deny that that person's here. When I've been working with him there until all these new policies went into place. So I was wondering if somebody else has had that struggle and what they're trying to do about it. And then I also have one more thing. I need to, I have a client, 72 years old, that was beaten and robbed at Nativity. So he left. I'm not gonna say where he left the area, but he needs a tent and I don't know where to find the tent. If anybody has a tent, let me know. I come get it so I can give it to him because he's elder and he needs at least a tent.
All
So
right,
yeah.
Heather, let's see if anybody can respond
Okay.
potentially in the chat to that need.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa?
I'm just checking, is there anyone from Nativity House in the room who can give us an update? If not, I will contact them and see if someone can come next week to talk with us about the changes, because yeah, things have been changing rapidly. I know that for them, so if you're here in the room, I'm chatting to give you a little bit of time to raise your hand, but it's hard to hear things secondhand. I also have I know there are some very dear people who were laid off on Friday, and it is not an easy thing. So that's another piece to put in here. If anyone is looking for good case managers, the Nativity House has had to let go of some really fine people. So post it in the chat if you've got a job opportunity for those folks. Oh, also, if anyone has a tent and it's an issue with dropping off, picking up, Heather, if someone wants to deliver a tent to the outreach supply closet, I can put your name on it and put it in the back room. So just let me know.
That'd be great.
And there is a mention from Jan Runbeck about asking for your contact. So if you can share that in the chat, Heather, that would be fantastic. Others with updates from the streets. Well, I will just share that again, as I'm out and about in the community, I am seeing people continue to be just dispersing away from the emphasis area that Sally mentioned in the hilltop. And I know the community I live in is seeing more and more folks staying in their vehicles and RVs now over the last couple of weeks, which uh, frankly is not all that much of a challenge for the community to absorb. However, I live in a neighborhood where people are very on top of contacting 311 to file reports about folks. And so the people who end up staying here for a night or two end up being hustled out very quickly. So yeah, I wish I had good advice. I had to actually work with my neighbor to let him know that yes, there's a person in an RV living on our block, but there's nowhere in the county that you can legally do a safe parking program for RVs, and that's a very unfortunate thing. Um, that conversation, however, happened after the 311 reports had been made and the person was hustled out. So if you have the opportunity to pay attention and you're living in anywhere around the Hilltop area, it's quite likely you're going to see similar activities in your neighborhood. All right, one last call for anybody who has any on the streets items to share. And as a reminder, Christy, I see your hand up. You want to chat something? Oh, I see you did put something in the chat. I'm playing charades here. So do people use 311 to report on houseless cars, trucks, and RVs? Yes, definitely that happens all the time. And in fact, quite frequently, neighbors will band together and try to flood 311 with requests related to a particular vehicle or RV. Sally, anything you'd add?
Oh yeah, if you make a request to 311, like I reported an abandoned vehicle by my house, no homeless people, just an abandoned vehicle. I started getting copies of all the other 311 reports that were being made in my general area, including all the ones about homeless people, the ones about vegetation, the ones about whatever. The city automatically does that, and you have to opt out. But I have to tell you, if you don't opt out, you get a pretty good picture of how the information about the 311 reports is being spread far and wide. So what that does potentially is create an accelerating effect for the complaints about people living in vehicles or people setting up a tent. That's not necessarily a good outcome for anybody. So I just be aware of that. But you might want to try that out and see what happens when you start getting copies of all those extra complaints. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, thank you, Sally. Yeah,
Hey,
so
Rob,
yeah,
what's the law in Tacoma? Is there anyone on Tacoma city government? I believe you can stay for up to 7 days in your RV or car on Tacoma streets. Anyone know that's my vague memory of the law.
I
Anybody know the
believe that
exact?
a car can be in the same space for up to 7 days, but if I remember correctly, you cannot live in, I think the code, the way it's written, you can't live in your vehicle. Um, but I'm happy to be corrected if someone has better information.
I was hoping maybe someone from the city of Tacoma would just be able to
Jump
at
right
least
in.
let us know what our rights are or what our rights are not.
Yeah. Yeah, Christy, I see your comment in the chat that it's supposed to be 3 days if you live in it, 7 days if you don't live in it. And thank you for sharing that, your own situation, Christy. What I will say is that there's a lot of discretion in how those regulations are enforced because I'm aware of lots of locations where people own RVs and trailers that are parked on the street year round and do not move their vehicles every 7 days in order to um, avoid having the vehicle tagged and potentially towed. Um, and yeah, there's a double standard there for sure. I'll just leave it at that. All right. So let's shift away from on the streets. Yeah, and Christine, I see your comment in the chat. Not sure what neighborhood you live in, but I know I run through some neighborhoods where there are RVs that never move, and it's ironic that there's such a double standard. So let's shift over to our partner spotlight, and I'd like to invite Carrie Moore from Pierce County Human Services to share with us about September being Recovery Month and some opportunities for folks to share their stories. So, Carrie, you want to take it away?
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks for having me. I
Yeah.
just got really nervous all of a sudden. I don't know if it was the
No need to
recording
be
or what.
nervous.
You guys trying to get hold of the city of Tacoma? I'm with Pierce County. I don't know, but I just got nervous. But Hi, everybody. I know some of you pretty well. Some of you are some newer faces, but I just want to introduce myself. I've been trying to attend this meeting as often as I can. I'm the communications manager for Pierce County Human Services. I've been there for 7 years, and prior to that, I was actually at Comprehensive Life Resources, where I ran the supported employment program, and I'm actually a board member at CLR now. So behavioral health is really close to my heart and something I really care about. And now that I'm at the county, I've been lucky to be part of some of the initiatives that we've had there. If you guys follow, local politics, sounds like you do. The Pierce County Council just proclaimed August as opioid overdose awareness month. And there's also the opioid summit that's coming up. And Pierce County has a couple cool programs that are going to be starting soon. And it's just kind of a perfect lead into September and this fall, where the last, I think, 3 or 4 years we've celebrated Recovery Month. It originally started with SAMHSA, but it's just a way to celebrate and share recovery stories, people experiencing mental illness, substance abuse issues, how they're recovering from that. As you guys know, in the work that you do, recovery is difficult, and it's always it's exacerbated by a lot of different things, right? So we want to celebrate people's recovery stories by sharing them and really trying to reduce the stigma. One of the things that we've seen over the years with like a lot of our work in behavioral health and surveys that we've done and stuff is that even though there's been more focus on it and more money towards it over the last couple of years, people still have a hard time accessing it, whether that's because they don't live near a place where maybe they think they can get transportation to it, or they don't know how, or maybe they called but the wait list is weeks long, right? And so there's just a number of barriers that people have to get through to get to recovery. And so when they're there, we really want to celebrate it. So in September, we're celebrating Recovery Month, and we've shared this information with people across the county. A lot of our providers, our behavioral health team has sent it out to the community. Would love to hear if you've already seen it. But if you haven't, I would love if you guys could share with your networks. We are soliciting stories, and so we have an online form, a flyer that we're sharing. And so we've kind of handed out to our community partners. We have a website where people can look at and see past stories that have been shared. And people have the option to remain fully anonymous for their recovery stories, or they can include photos, their names, anything they kind of want to share, right? So over the years, we've gotten some really, really amazing stories from people that are coming from drug court, assistant outpatient therapy, right? People that have come from the district court resource center, people that are from that work with case managers like you and street outreach workers like you. So a lot of them have been really moving, and so we share them all online throughout the course of September. We post them on our social media, on our website, our newsletters, and really just try to promote it as much as we can to celebrate it, because it's staying sober is really hard, and that's a big deal, right? So I just want to share with you guys some links and everything. And oops, Teresa told me to put my name and everything in the chat, and I haven't done that yet. So I will do it afterwards, but here is just some information for you guys. We have a flyer that I'm putting in here. And then here is also the link to the flyer. I know ink is expensive. If you guys need some prints that you'd like to take out with you. Oops, I'm direct messaging Jordan. Sorry, Jordan. She's like, why did I get this? There's our online form. But yeah, if you need copies, I'd be happy to get you flyers. I don't know how realistic it is for you guys. I mean, when you're out in your work handing out flyers, but QR code or something, if there's something easier that you think it would be good to share, please let me know. I'd be happy to create something. And also just to kind of plug, you guys, I mean, I don't need to tell you guys know how bad it is out there. But just some data that we've recently put on our websites for our opioid response is that in 2024, there were 423 accidental overdose deaths in Pierce County. 301 of those were related to opioids, and 281 of those were related to fentanyl. And it's not good, right? So we have a lot of data for you guys to view if you're interested in looking at that. But we are excited that we just recently started extended days at detox. If you hadn't heard about that, it's a partnership with MDC, where we've been supporting them to pay people to stay longer, and not pay them to stay longer in detox, pay for them to stay longer in detox, because we know longer detox stays usually means higher probability of recovery, right? And then we also have funding that we're putting out for a mobile van that will be going out in the county, and that is going to be awarded, I think, sometime in the next month or two. So that's an exciting new program. And then, of course, if you guys are interested in learning more, we'd love to see you at the Opioid Summit and Opioid Awareness Day, Overdose Awareness Day. So that the summit is on August 22nd from 8:45 to 1. And the Overdose Awareness Day is going to be at Owen Beach on Thursday, September 4th from 4 to 7. And I'll put the links to the flyers in the chat, but I wanted to see if there's any questions.
Yeah, great. So if folks could just raise your hands, or you can just come off mute and ask Carrie a question.
See, Erica Rayburn from Pierce County Behavioral Health is here. She's probably having a heart attack, worried I'm going to say her name and ask if she wants to add anything. But if you want to, Erica, feel free.
Hey, Carrie. Yeah, well, not a heart attack, but I was really glad to see you. We've done this a few times in the past. And we've gotten a couple really good recovery stories, but it's sometimes hard to get the message out there. I know even just logistically, for some of these people, it might be difficult for them. So yeah, any help you guys can get, or that we can get from you for getting those stories, we would love it. Just to showcase that on our website, to get these people's stories out there and kind of get everyone hearing their experiences and just how hard they're working to make their lives better. So yeah, please get the word out there. We'd love to get those stories.
I just also add to that, we had a couple really good stories last year, and someone said that we could share their story, but they didn't include their name, and so we didn't have a way to reach out to them. And we actually were someone from, like, I think Como or King 5 actually reached out to us and wanted to do a story. And so if someone is interested, and willing to share their story, we'd love to help them amplify that. As you guys know, unless someone's really had a loved one or is in the business, that has someone that's struggled with alcohol or drugs or mental illness, they don't really know how bad it is, how difficult it is to access resources, it's just how much of a struggle it is. So I think the more we can do to get out there to reduce the stigma, especially before, we start having these like mobile programs and more talk about opioids and overdosing, it'll just be good. So trying to trying to normalize it, right? Not be so weird about talking about it. Maybe that's why I'm weird. The stigma's getting to me, but breaking through, you guys.
Teresa, I see your hand up.
I would love to have some printed flyers. I would hand them out at the outreach supply closet. And I just want to suggest, I don't know if you do anything like this, but as Garrett mentioned, that's not an uncommon reason for people who are unhoused to die of overdoses. And part of the problem coming to any events is always transportation. So if you're interested in including more people who are unhoused, it might be worth considering some sort of transportation plan to get them to the events or to invite them to the events.
A great idea. I will forward that to the opioid task force. Thank you.
And as you consider folks who may have an interesting story to share, I know from my past work at Metropolitan Development Council, where the withdrawal management services are a big part of what MDC does. There's a lot of power if people get to a comfortable place to share their story. They can reclaim and build a lot of power by sharing that story. And I know I have seen situations where people have taken that hard step and had community wrap around them as they share the story, and it can be a really positive experience. So just something to consider as you're trying to find folks who might be able and willing to share a story.
And
All
some
right.
people said the links are a little weird, so I'll before I get off this, I'll make sure that the links are working and that you guys get all the correct information, and I'll forward everything to
Awesome.
Rob and Teresa too.
Yeah, sounds good, Carrie. And actually, if you're on our email list, you can also just send an email with the links after you double check that they're good. Just if you're willing to do that, there's about 700 people on the email list, so it's an even broader distribution than the 75 of us here.
Sure.
All right. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
you guys. Thank you for the work you do. Appreciate it.
All right, so now we're going to shift over to something that I'm hoping will not put people to sleep, and that is to talk a little bit about federal funding and take a look back at a year ago when a lot of us were uh, combing through the Project 2025 documents and trying to determine what the potential impacts of those plans would be for housing and homelessness, as well as medical care in the coming year if uh, Donald Trump was reelected, which of course did happen. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about the impacts on housing and taking a look back at some of the key things that I'm going to highlight from Project 2025 related to housing. Hopefully at a future meeting, we can dig into the impacts on medical care. So I'm going to do a quick screen share and just share a couple of clips or images from Project 2025 that we can talk through here for a moment. All right, so I'm going to make sure that's off of the screen. So these are screenshots again from the Project 2025 publication. It's easy to find on the web as a PDF, and you can dig through. It's quite dense. It's 200 and some pages, but the housing section includes a number of key elements that impact programs that we're concerned about here regarding homelessness and supporting people who are currently homeless and getting them out of homelessness. And the first one I highlight here is um, what I used a highlighter on. HUD should implement reforms reducing an implicit anti-marriage based bias in housing assistance programs and strengthen work and work readiness. Well, that's consistent with changes that have been implemented already at the federal level around the so-called Big Beautiful Bill and especially that are having an impact on Medicaid and medical care. But the next thing that I highlight here is the explicit uh, demand that housing first policies be ended so that the department would prioritize mental health and substance abuse issues before offering permanent interventions in homelessness. So that may have a ring to it for folks who recall the executive order that was signed by the president here just a couple of weeks ago um, regarding their policies related to homelessness. So um, they have talked about two things in this area. One, the work and work readiness ties into the limitations that the administration is proposing to only provide housing assistance to families for 2 years. And then also the ending housing first and shifting the focus completely to substance use and mental health ties directly into the executive order that the president signed here a week or two weeks ago. So let me see if I can move to the next image. And this is that the offices of the secretary should recommence proposed regulation put forward by the Trump administration that would prohibit non-citizens, including all mixed status families, from living in all federally assisted housing. Um, so this is the precursor, of course, to the effort that the administration's taking to um, try to focus on immigration and removing people from the country who may even be here legally under immigration programs that do exist and have them removed from the country. And then the last one I wanted to highlight was the secretary should initiate a HUD task force consisting of politically appointed personnel to identify and reverse all actions taken by the Biden administration to advance progressive ideology. So this is the whole idea of making regulations and tying funding decisions to make sure that there's no wokeness in who is being served and how folks are being selected to be served. Um, that ties directly to the kinds of impacts that we've been seeing here in Pierce County with contracts and um, contracting language that the county simply cannot agree to that would require that they ensure there's no that there's not support for folks who are LGBTQ plus, IA plus, that there's no funding going to anyone who may be an asylum seeker or not be legally a citizen. So yeah, as Christine says in the chat, serving folks is so woke. Um, so that's kind of where the things that we were considering and concerned about last year from Project 2025. There's much more in that multi-page chapter about housing, but those are just the three things I thought would be good to call out this morning. Um, these things then have now been manifested in the budget processes, all the way from the so-called Big Beautiful Bill that passed before 4th of July to the rescission package that the Congress passed earlier, and the ongoing process to pass the fiscal year 2026 budget. The fiscal year 2026 budget is where we want to shift a little bit next, and you'll be able to connect the dots between the what was in that Project 2025 and what's being considered in the budget. And what I'm going to share first, I'm going to give you guys the link to a email summary that the Housing Alliance sent out. See if this will work for everybody. It's an ugly link, but it should work for folks. This is an email that the Housing Alliance sent to folks who attended a July federal funding webinar, and does a really good high-level overview of what was shared in that meeting that included a presentation that we're going to see on screen here in a second from Thaddeus Elliott who's a housing advocacy organizer for the National Low Income Housing Coalition. The meeting also included some local housing providers in Washington State sharing what the impacts so far had been from budget actions from the administration. And then Representative Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal was also on that meeting. We did not record that meeting for distribution, but we did send out this summary. So hopefully folks are able to open that, and there's a lot of good links there. But what I want to share on screen is just a few slides from the presentation. So back to that. And what Thaddeus tried to share in this presentation is, and I can drop the presentation in the chat after this, is kind of an overview of the federal budget process that includes the appropriations process, how Congress funds federal programs, um, budget reconciliation, and how that is different than the regular budget process, And then a slide that we included in the email that we sent out that shares what's the difference between the two processes. One being the normal appropriations process and the voting requirements to get that passed versus a reconciliation process that can pass out of the Senate with just 51 yes votes. The rescission package that was passed was using a reconciliation process. So there's a political reason for that because there's not a large majority for the Republicans in the Senate. Oh yeah, and thank you, Teresa. Let me get rid of this sidebar. Let's see. Voila. Yeah, let me go into slideshow mode. There we go. Although now I lost everything else on my screen. So let me continue to scroll through here briefly and then I'll come back. The reason, Teresa, that I don't usually do slideshow mode is it takes over the entire screen, so I can't do anything else. So typically the Congress begins the work of drafting its new spending bills in May and June. There's typically a deadline of September 30th for the next federal budget to get passed. However, Congress has not passed followed a normal budget process for a very long time. And you'll recall that earlier well, actually last month, the House went into recess, and now they're in the August recess for all of Congress. But the House went into recess in July because they couldn't come up with a majority of Republican House members to move the budget process forward without first considering the whole Epstein files issue. And because of that, they fled and went back home early, and they won't be back in DC until September. We'll see what happens in terms of process, whether that particular roadblock is still in place. However, if Congress does not pass new spending bills by October 1st, then they do a continuing resolution or partially shut down the government. And I think those of us who've paid attention to this for a while are very aware that we've had essentially the government has worked for years now under a series of different continuing resolutions. And typically what happens is there's a threat of a shutdown, there's a deadline, they don't pass the next continuing resolution until a day or two before the deadline, sometimes hours before the deadline. It's just gridlock. So here's where we stand right now. And this is as of mid-July, but things have not significantly changed. So right now, there's a proposed 44% overall cut to HUD programs. This would include slashing HUD rental assistance by 43%, and redesigning the programs entirely by rolling housing choice vouchers or Section 8 vouchers, public housing, project-based rental assistance, housing for the elderly, and housing for persons with disabilities into one state rental assistance block grant, funded at $31.79 billion. So it would be a $5 billion, well, actually, for comparison, tenant-based rent assistance alone for this year was $36 billion. So the entire rolled together program there would be 31 billion versus one segment being 36 billion. Also, it would impose, as I mentioned earlier, 2-year time limits on assistance for households, which neither elderly or households in which neither elderly nor persons with disabilities reside. It would also cut the housing assistance grant funding by $27 million from the current levels, with no proposed additional funding for continuum of care or permanent supportive housing. and limit the use of these funds to assist only on an emergency, short-term or medium-term basis. And then you can see there's a number of other large cuts. It would allocate down to the last bullet, 26 million for HUD's Fair Housing Program, which while zeroing out funding for the Fair Housing Initiatives Program, the National Fair Housing Training Academy, and the Limited English Proficiency Initiative. So previously, Fair Housing had $86 million. So essentially, much of this is being gutted. So I'm going to stop my screen share here if I can. There we go. And there. So I don't want to dwell too much on the yeah, and Cynthia, let me drop in the chat here shortly the actual slides so that everyone can read through it. I don't really want to spend time reading slides on the screen when folks could just read it in the chat. So let me do that now. Hopefully quickly. May take me a moment to get there, so I'll wait until we do our government updates to drop it in. But I do urge that folks read the the link that I shared, because it does offer some hope. There are some actions that the folks both from the National Low Income Housing Coalition as well as locally uh, urged us all to take to advocate for Congress to change this before they pass it, and not make these draconian cuts in the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Among the things, obviously, urging folks to contact their members of Congress, especially now. Congress has the entire month of August through Labor Day weekend off. So keep an eye out for any scheduled in-district meetings with members of Congress. We know that here in Washington, and here in Tacoma especially, our representatives in Congress are not in support of this. However, the Democrats don't have the majority, so they cannot actually control this process. The real opportunity is if you have friends who reside in the Vancouver area where they could talk to, try to reach out to Representative Marie Glusenkamp Perez, or if they live over in Eastern Washington and can reach out to Representative Dan Newhouse. There are opportunities to try to sway folks who are directly responsible for the kinds of cuts that will happen here in Washington if they reach out to their members of Congress. The other thing is that there are simple actions that we can all take here. Many of us do these things all the time. If you're on social media, amplifying messages about housing and homelessness, tagging your representatives in those kinds of messages, and then participating or organizing rallies or marches to stand up for ongoing support for housing vouchers. We know that there are hundreds of people in Pierce County who receive HUD housing vouchers whose housing could be at risk, if not immediately, within 2 years under this new budget. So there are things we can do. And just like Carrie spoke with us about trying to gather stories to share, gathering those stories around the impacts of the changes and the life-changing support that things like housing vouchers provide for people is also another way to build power and share stories in a meaningful way to try to change this legislation before it gets passed. So that's a lot. I know it's not the most there's not much good news there. But there is hope in things that we can do as a community to try to continue advocating. So any questions from folks that I might be able to help address? I see Christine's hand up. Go ahead, Christine.
Yeah, I'm so sorry I'm not on camera. I'm not at home right now, and I wasn't sure I was going to be able to join the call, but I really wanted to be on the call today. And you know, I'm happy to talk about what was planned in Project 2025 for healthcare and what we're seeing. And I think that you know, in both these areas and in other areas, there is absolutely the intent to operationalize Project 2025. We have to take it super seriously and work really proactively because what they intended to do is what they're doing, and they're doing it really quickly and efficiently. And it's going to be very difficult to roll this stuff back when it's eliminated. And just this morning, I received an email from the executive director of the National Association of Free and Charitable Clinics that there is a current effort underway to identify nonprofits specifically that have received any federal support that might have, in their terms, contributed to illegal immigration. And so they're doing audits of these large, kind of visible nonprofits. And there are large visible nonprofits that have received federal funding that do provide support to people regardless of their immigration status. I have no doubt that these nonprofits will be targeted in very aggressive ways and potentially shut down. It's just something for us all to be really aware of because it's not we're all at risk, and especially the most vulnerable people in our communities are really at risk right now.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. And I do, whenever your schedule works to do it, it would be good to take a similar snapshot of the impacts in healthcare with Project 2025 and what's actually been proposed. Anyone else with questions? And I did drop the presentation in the chat, so hopefully folks can grab that and dig through the slides on your own. There is more good information in there as well as in the email link that I provided. So hopefully that's useful to folks. Yeah, Teresa?
So part of what your slides talked about is the rollout of these cuts. And it's not yet clear to me. It's when we talk about it, it's like sometime between now and 2 years from now, some of these things will be felt very much within the community. And that's something that I don't know if anyone has made something, a chart or some sort of graphic, or if it was in that slideshow and I somehow it slipped by me or we didn't get to it, but something about when these things are going to have the most impact, like that, what, 44% cut, if that goes through, when does it start?
Yeah, it would start in October of this year.
Okay. Just in
Yeah.
time for World Homelessness Day.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and that's one of the challenges is that, you know, you connecting this to things like World Homelessness Day and the impending disaster of winter that we have every year. Um, these things have compounding impacts, and it is hard. I haven't yet seen a visual that would talk about the timing of these things. Really, the focus from a lot of advocacy organizations has been on trying to thwart these changes rather than I know there's a concern a lot of times that focusing on the immediate impacts loses the opportunity to try to stop it from happening in the first place. So
I kind of think we have to walk and chew gum at the same time.
I agree. Yep. Yep. So if I can find anything like that, and if anybody else finds something like that, that would be really helpful to be able to share. I haven't seen it yet. However, I will just briefly say that the direct impacts of these budget items to homelessness and homeless programs will be the focus of a federal webinar that the Housing Alliance is going to host on the 20th of August. After this morning's meeting, I'll be working on putting the email together to send out to everybody, inviting them to the webinar on August 20th. That meeting will include folks from the National Homelessness Law Center, the Housing Not Handcuffs people, as well as Thaddeus will rejoin us from the National Low Income Housing Coalition to talk specifically about the executive order and the budget impacts on homelessness nationwide. So hopefully, if you're on the Housing Alliance email list, you'll get that later today, and I can forward that email to the coalition list as well if folks want to sign up. So, Laurel, you came off mute. You want to say something?
Well, I just wanted to make a comment as we're advocating. I worked in Housing First in Eastern Washington, which was a very hard sell.
Mhm.
And my message and the message of my board members to people who said, but Housing First, it doesn't make any sense, blah, blah, blah. And we would always say, what you're describing is housing only.
Yeah.
And Housing First is not housing only. And we were able to put in 15 new units, and law enforcement was there for a housing discussion I had, and they told me afterwards, they came to tell me I was just, nuts. And about 2 months later, after we got a lot of people housed, the chief of police came to a homeless coalition meeting like this one. And I said, I think that Chief Crown likes it when he doesn't have to take someone to the hospital or the jail. He can take them home. And he said, I'll do you one better. I don't even see them anymore. And so it really it needs to take on an inertia of its own, but the message has to be housing first is not housing only. So if we can get that message, and the fact that it costs less to house someone than it does to leave them on the street, not to mention the moral obligation we have to do that. So that's just my little soapbox for the morning.
No, that's great. That's great, Laurel. That's very similar to the messaging I've always used about Housing First. That and there's a lot of logic to the idea that, of course, you can't make your substance use addiction and mental health treatment successful if you don't know where you're getting your next meal or where you're sleeping that night.
Correct.
It's,
Yeah,
that level of instability does not support recovery.
right. And I often would say, if you were at home or were at work or at school and you just realized you were getting ill, you wouldn't go outside and lay on the sidewalk. You
Right.
go home. We go home to get better.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Thank you for that, Laurel. All right, so that segment went a little longer than I had planned, so I'm going to shuffle our agenda just a little bit. We'll talk more about local advocacy after our government updates, but why don't we shift gears over to government updates and first see if we've had anybody from the city of Tacoma join us that would like to share updates today. Hi, Caleb.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Just a couple of updates to share. In our city manager report that was put out into the community, something to flag for you all is one, there was a right-of-way approval for Wiley Ave that I would just wanted to flag. It's typically outside of the city of Tacoma's response. Our role is often just kind of as a reminder to flag specific encampments in the right of way in the city of Tacoma to utilize that resource. And so in this particular situation was by McKinley Park. There were 16 individuals there, and 12 of them actually got connected to sheltering and services through that program, which is a really good, awesome response. And so wanted to flag you all with that and that response. The other one to flag, and I know I did this I think a couple of weeks ago, but that Tacoma Rescue Mission broke ground on their expansion project, on their total project. They are they're fixing and doing some work on the men's shelter side, which will not have an impact to their regular operations as they prepare. And then they actually break ground on the expansion on September early first week of September, to add 100 beds for the men's shelter wing. This will bring a total of 210 beds for the single men and 50 for the women's side. So it's a 260 capacity total for that campus on downtown. So that will be a huge lift for them. They anticipate late spring, summer completion. So we'll keep that monitoring, and I believe Coalition has reached out for a later date for TRM to come and give a total overview for that project. As a reminder, though, the funding that came for that was partly through the city, through our general fund, and then we're also pass throughing a HUD dollars, which was executed just last month, and that is $4 additional million through the city to support that project. And then also the county and state has also are funding this project, and then of course TRM has actually had some private philanthropy that's also supported this project. So super excited, really glad and happy for that, and good for them on getting that, because it is a huge lift. So those are the biggest updates for me.
Thank you, Caleb. Anybody with quick questions for Caleb? And I see Teresa's hand up.
Hi, Caleb. So I'm assuming that those funds that were pass-through funds had to be for capital somehow. But I'm thinking about the city's general fund. It's been really hard to see Nativity House shutting down, and it feels odd that this big bolus of money is going in another direction, and the programs that we already have up and running in a building that a nonprofit built for these purposes seems to be way underutilized. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so the funds were for capital dollars, and these are a couple of things. They're capital to improve overnight sheltering. As I understand the Nativity House, there's no, at this point, overnight sheltering that's being impacted, but day services, which is another problem in itself with staffing. So that is something to keep in mind, but this is capital, and this is overnight sheltering, which is a huge need for us in the community. So I think typically how we have responded, and I think as a response system, overnight is a huge lift and priority, because we want people to be out of the elements overnight. We want people to have a place to sleep and safety and dignified experience to be able to do that. And then I think a day services is a different component together. As I know, TRM is actually opening up space so that they can also increase their day service with this expansion too as well, which is a big benefit that might be able to help. But they're two different organizations, and they have two different ways of operating and their own budget. And the city just utilizes the funds that we can leverage with whether our state or federal partners to help. But in terms of individual organizations, I'll leave that up for providers to talk about their process for procuring funds and some of the things that they need to do.
Yeah, I do understand, especially when things are earmarked for capital improvements. It's a sad state of affairs, because here in the Hilltop, we're being deeply impacted by the fact that there's no longer going to be a place where people can go unless they're already staying in the overnight shelter here. So, and it is important because this is an area that is, as you know, highly impacted, and it's where people can actually walk from their camps. And another point I would say is that it's really good to keep developing overnight shelter, but recognizing the huge difference between the overnight shelter availability and the people who are currently without homes. Day centers are incredibly important. They are, at least people can come in and rest if they have to stay awake all night. So I'm not sure about that line differentiating which is more important.
Thanks for raising that up, Teresa. I do think that's a common challenge for community members to understand the different limitations on funding and seeing cuts in one area while expansion happens in another. All right. So any last other questions for Caleb before we move on to Pierce County? All right, so any updates from Pierce County Human Services? Somehow I knew you were here, Devin.
Always here, Rob. With some with some limited restrictions, limited times, I would say, but I'm usually always here. So good morning, everyone. Just a couple updates on my side. I wanted to share some really good news from the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program grant that we were awarded for 2025 and 2026. It's a 2-year grant, $3.5 million. And it's to serve youth and young adults specifically in our community. We have been accepted by HUD for our coordinated community plan. The coordinated community plan is basically the intention plan for how we intend to spend those dollars. And I just want to point out that that was designed and approved by our Pierce County Youth Action Board. And if you're unfamiliar with the Youth Action Board, that is a group of young folks with lived experience of homelessness, and they are the governing body over this work. And what that means is they make all the decisions, and that is a beautiful thing. So the coordinated community plan has been approved by HUD, as I mentioned, and the request for proposals is currently out in the community. So you can apply. It is open. There are 3 project types in that RFP, and I think I've mentioned them on this call before, but just a reminder in case there's anyone on the call that would like to apply or would like to share the information with friends or colleagues. It is a transitional to rapid rehousing program, which provides up to 2 years in a transitional facility and then up to 36 months in a rapid rehousing program. So really an excellent way to address the needs of a young person who has experienced the crisis of homelessness. That's an extended period of time and really what people need when they're trying to recover. The other intervention type is coordinated entry. And then the last is for mobile advocacy. And mobile advocacy is designed to help young folks to get connected to the system, to meet basic needs, advocacy for any challenges they may be having in the community, and really getting out into all the areas of Pierce County to make sure that all young folks are getting served in a responsive way. And so these are very exciting programs to be coming into our community, and I'm really excited to see what that looks like. There is an event on October 23rd. Flyers, link for registration will all be coming out, and as soon as those materials are ready, I will be sharing them with the group. Next update is, as you know, the coordinated entry project is underway. I know a lot of you saw the news article, but I wanted to clarify that it's not a study. It is a project to implement changes to the coordinated entry system. A study is someone presenting a report to you after they've looked at the way that your process functions, and that's not what this is. By the end of the project, it's a 12-month project, we will have implemented changes to the coordinated entry system. So I wanted to clarify that for everyone. And then my last update is that on October 15th, we will be hosting the last community feedback session for the planning of the amended comprehensive plan to end homelessness. So again, flyers and link for registration will be sent as soon as those materials are ready. It is a virtual evening session, so we tried to make all 3 of them as accessible to folks as possible. This is our only virtual session, but anyone that's interested in learning about the plan, learning about the strategies in the plan, to programmatically introduce things into our community that can help people, please come. You are highly encouraged to attend, and your feedback is really important to the process. That's all I've got, Rob.
Thanks, Devin. And I don't recall, did you want to say anything about the comprehensive plan to end homelessness, the IAB, at this time?
So I will say our September meeting is coming. We are very close to final votes for the board members that will be joining the group. We did find out that they do not have to go through executive and council approval, which is great. So just waiting on a vote or two from our members, and then those members will be fully accepted into the board and will be joining us in September pending those last couple votes. And so encourage everyone to listen in so you can get to know some of those new board members. They're our task force that is responsible for implementing the plan or helping to implement the plan. Really, that onus or the responsibility of implementation lies on Pierce County Human Services, but the task force, the IAB, really helped to guide that work. And then I think that's it. The comprehensive plan is moving right along. I have to have a draft to the state technical assistance consultants by September 1st. It doesn't have to be done and blessed and ready, but if I want feedback from those technical assistance consultants, I have to have something to them by the 1st. And so we are moving right along. Has to be adopted by December, and we are making some really good progress, and there's some great ideas in there for implementing new programs. So excited to share it out with the community.
Thanks, Devin. I knew you could share more about the comprehensive plan, so thanks for that. So let's shift over to updates from our friends at the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department, and I see Isaiah on screen.
Yes, it is Isaiah, from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. So I have just a handful of updates today from the street medicine program. The first is that last week we have a new record high of number of patients seen. So our nurse and our nurse practitioner saw 11 patients in one day, which is really great. So each week we're seeing more and more patients, and some of them are repeat patients as well. So we're seeing more patients, and we're also building rapport with them as well. And we're also seeing improved health outcomes. So I can't get into too many details, but the folks that we are seeing are generally getting a little bit better, which is fantastic news. Moving forward, next week, we have a new intern joining us. I believe Brogan has oriented him last week, or this week, I should say. So he will be joining our staff. He is a student from Clover Park Technical College. We're super excited to work with him. He'll be working with us in the fields, as well as helping us prepare supplies. So that should be really good as well. Coming up Monday, I know it's going to be really hot. So we're going to be out in the field with Senko, which is the South End, oh my God, Neighborhood Council. There you go. We'll be doing outreach with them on the 72nd and Pacific area. So we'll be giving out frozen water. We'll be giving out cooling towels. We'll be giving out sunscreen, all that. So if you're in the area, come say hi. And finally, I think that's it, actually. I was going to mention the opioid summit as well on August 22nd, but I know Carrie had already mentioned that. But just a reminder, during the summit, there's going to be an anti-stigma panel. There will be breakfast. There will be refreshments. I believe there's also lunch. So please come on down or up, wherever you're coming from.
Thanks, Isaiah. Any questions for Isaiah? All right. So last but not least, I'm not sure if we have anybody from the Pierce County Department of Emergency Management on the call, but wanted to provide some space if there's any updates there.
Hey Rob, good morning. It's
Hi,
Wyatt.
Wyatt.
No significant updates this week, just monitoring and supporting human services with the warmer weather coming up as needed.
Great. Thank you for being here, Wyatt.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Yep. And in addition, an oversight that I made in sending out the agenda today was to include an update after the monthly meeting for the continuum of care. So Cynthia, would you like to share updates from the COC?
I would. This is very brief, but just to start with, we have a board meeting twice a month, and so I'm really reporting on the board meeting as opposed to the full COC. One of the new updates is that we have a new website, new page. If you just Google Pierce County COC, you will get to it. And I think it's a little bit more user-friendly than what we had before. And it definitely sets out the COC as not being a governmental agency. The second thing is that the board is working on more of a definition of how we want our culture to be in that organization. The process of transferring from the prior board, everybody on the everybody in the COC is on the board to a larger membership and a smaller board has created some concern about transparency and trust. And so we're trying to build something that we can share with everybody and make it a lot more user-friendly in the sense of how members engage. Thirdly, I think I shared prior to this a plan that we have developed for getting outreach into the community and getting community engagement, particularly around the reduction of stigma for people who are unhoused, and also how do we work as a community to support each other in with the lack of federal funding that we're experiencing, and particularly in the Medicaid category, but also on homelessness. We had planned to start in September, and we have been having some issues getting the right data to do a one-pager that we would share prolifically in the community while doing these presentations. So we'll get a little bit of a late start, but I'm making the comment here today because we are hoping that we can recruit some of you to help with this effort. And so you will be hearing more from me on that. And then let's see. Yeah, I think that's it. I want to shift just briefly to the League of Women Voters of Washington. Apropos of Rosemary's comments this morning, the League is going to be starting a decline to sign campaign for the Initiative 126 that has been proposed by Republicans. And that would require birth certificates in order to register to vote, which would be a huge change for the state of Washington and really trying to exclude people from that right. So I'm just giving you a heads up that we'll be coming back with information about that and hoping that this group can also get on board with that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia, and apologies again for not calling that out in the agenda. But we always want to hear the updates, so always just assume we'll create space. Um, all right, so that's it for our updates for this week. I do need to double back and talk a little bit more about local advocacy. And as folks have likely noticed, Sally stepped off the call to go to the special city council meeting that started at 9:30. So Mary Connolly from Pierce County has offered to offer updates on the county activities. Go ahead, Mary.
Thanks, Rob. Yes, Mary Connolly. I'm a policy analyst with the Pierce County Council. So I'll note some meetings next week that might be of interest to you all at the Monday study session of the Pierce County Council. That's at 11 a.m. There will be an update from Uncommon Bridges on the Unified Regional Approach project. At the Tuesday regular meeting of the council next week at 3 p.m., the council will have a final hearing on a change to the current budget. So the budget that ends this at the end of this year. And that would set aside $25 million from the county's fund balance as a sort of contingency fund to help backfill federal funding as needed. And then there's a committee of the whole meeting on Thursday at 9:30. Committee of the whole is just a fancy word for like the council meeting all together outside of their regular meeting time. And the agenda hasn't been released for this yet, but I believe they'll probably be talking about the budget for the next 2 years. So those are the things of interest next week. And then on Tuesday, August 19th, which is in 2 weeks, the Health and Human Services Committee meeting will include some items that might be of interest, like updates on eviction prevention and homeless prevention programs, as well as a hearing on affordable housing funding recommendations. So that's in a couple Tuesdays, but maybe mark your calendar. And I
Awesome.
can drop links to the meetings.
Oh, that would be fantastic, Mary. Thank you. And turning to notes that Sally prepared for me, since she's been so good about keeping track of local opportunities. City of Tacoma did have a special meeting this morning regarding the Workers' Bill of Rights. That took place at 9:30. I think the meeting's already wrapped up, so that's on there. The on Monday, August 11th at 5:30 p.m. There's going to be a Human Rights Commission meeting with an item on the agenda related to the opioid settlement process, which may be of interest to people. The Community Policing Advisory Committee on Monday night at 6 may report on progress on the CBA negotiations between the city and police union number 6. So that may be of some interest to people. In terms of the study session next Tuesday at noon, the city of Tacoma will um, discuss tide flats regulations, uh, the South Tacoma Groundwater Protection District regulations, but there's nothing specifically related to housing and homelessness on the agenda at this point. And then there's further information about labor standards at the regular city council meeting on Tuesday night at 5, as well as community forum, which is another opportunity to comment on anything that the city council has purview over, including if you're upset about the emphasis area in the hilltop that they're planning to enforce through August of next year. That's an opportunity to tell city council members why you think that's a bad idea. So, not to plant seeds of any testimony, but that might be good. Then there's one more committee meeting next week that may be of interest to folks. That's the Community Vitality and Safety Committee. They are talking at that meeting about youth violence prevention. The August 28th meeting coming up in a couple of weeks we'll dig into the Landlord Fairness Code and also have an inclement weather briefing. So probably an attempt to summarize the impacts of summer heat. So those are the local opportunities to participate and advocate over the next week. We are down to the last item on our agenda, and it's one of my favorite items of every week, and that is opportunities for people to share good trouble announcements, positive stories, just good of the order items. So I open the floor if you want to raise your hand or just come off mute and share with the 57 of us who remain in the meeting. This is an opportunity.
Hello, am I
Hi,
muted?
Sarah.
Hey, well, I'm working with my job coach and we're working on a resume, so I'll have a resume. So, that's the first thing. I want to know if anybody has any problem being on my resume. Devin,
Well, it looks like
Valerie,
Devin
Rob.
just popped off the meeting.
Well, I guess you don't mind.
Yeah.
Is Valerie still here?
I don't know.
I didn't see her in the meeting at all, but
Yeah, I don't currently either.
um,
But you may just want to email those folks, Sarah, just to double
I
check.
can't. That's the problem. The emails are bouncing back.
Oh, okay.
Could somebody do me a favor and email Valerie? I can put my phone number in the message if anybody wants it.
I'll email you, Sarah.
Thanks, Rob. I
Yep.
appreciate it.
Yep.
If you could email her for me, I'd be grateful. But I just need some help with something. If she can do it, I'd be appreciative.
Great.
Thanks.
This is
It's not a big
Finley. I
deal, but it'll
can
help.
I can send Val a message.
Oh, okay.
All right.
That'd be great.
You got my phone number, right? Oh, hi, Devin. I was just talking about her. She came back on.
All right.
That's what I get.
Teresa, I see your hand up.
So I know I've talked a lot today, but I have to say this, that we had someone at the outreach supply closet with the terrible foot problem and called Jan, and Catherine came. It was really, this gentleman was so touched by the care and compassion that he was shown by Catherine coming to take care of his feet. And I want to make sure that everybody knows that you can call those folks. And I don't know if either one of them is on this call, but I will ask that whatever number they want people to call, I will ask if they put it in there if they can. And if not, I'll talk to them next week. But know that this is a service that it's not just for foot care. If you have somebody who needs wound care or somebody who needs any kind of nursing, care or evaluation, they are, Jan and Catherine do a wonderful job.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. And yeah, I think Jan stepped away probably to work with clients. But it would be great actually if that information could be shared to the email list, um, just so everybody has that in hand if they run into somebody who could use that kind of help. Anyone else with items they'd like to share before we wrap up today's meeting? Yeah, brother token.
How's everybody doing today? I know it's been a minute, but I just wanted to update everybody real quick on Survive to Thrive and what we have been what we've been doing. So we do have let me do a quick update on what Survive to Thrive is. So we're a 18-month initiative focused on housing, insecurity, community violence, and systemic racism. And so what we have done is we've collected a grant from the Robert Woods Johnson Foundation for this 18-month initiative to train 10 community researchers on how to go out into their community. So it's a participatory action research. So basically, let me get to it. I just wanted to share the exciting news, but we have officially got all of our 10 community researchers from all across King and Pierce County. And so with those 10 researchers, we are going to be training them in participatory action research and equity-centered community design, which is basically the communities that will not be researched on, they will be researched with. And that at the forefront, the leadership of the Black, Brown, and Indigenous, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander young men that we have for our community researchers, they will be their leadership, they will be leading the entire initiative throughout the next 18 months or the next 14 months as we're already 4 months in. But with that, I just wanted to share that we did get our 10 community researchers and we're going into the training phase right now. And so soon enough within, I believe at the end of October, we will be going into community engagement and systems activation. So working with the systems in place, carceral legal, medical, social services, public health, all of these different sectors to work with them and have, so basically, how are we going to take what is the community's, lived experience and transform that into actionable items for these systems and the communities together to work towards? So that is the main focus. And I was just wanting to bring this up. So hopefully, we could have anybody who would be interested in working with us going later on, because we will be conducting focus groups and surveys, interviews, listening sessions with different communities all throughout Pierce and King County. And so at that point, if anyone would like to get involved with that, I can put my email in the chat, but once we're at that point, I would really like to come back to the coalition and express where we are at within their research so far. And so I was just trying to give a little update of what we're doing right now.
That's awesome. Just let me know or let us know when the timing would be right, and definitely we can provide a platform for that. And as Teresa mentioned in the chat, anything we can do to help and be supportive of this project sounds like a fantastic start.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing. Anyone else with good of the order items they'd like to share? Well, I want to say that I appreciate everybody hanging in there for another week. I know today's meeting was a little bit dense with the federal information. And I look forward to and hope to see many of you again next Friday. if you have an interest in helping plan upcoming meetings, there will be a small group of us staying on this call, and after a 5-minute break, we'll be doing that work. If you don't have the time for that, that's fine. I just hope to see you again next week. Thank you, everyone, and have a safe and happy weekend.